here's Brody Brazil.
As I record this, the Arizona Coyotes are not officially moving to Salt Lake City, Utah yet. But based on the long-term trajectory that I'm aware of and how recent events have been playing out and who is saying this and reporting that, I mean, it really just does feel like a matter of time before this is a done deal. It kind of already feels official already, even though I know it's not. And all of this bums me out personally. And maybe it has to do with my recent experience in covering the Oakland A's and their temporary spot in Sacramento and maybe their ultimate relocation to Las Vegas. Maybe I'm still personally affected by that. But the Desert Dogs aren't even my team. They don't play in my state. They're just a team I cover as part of my job. But that's why I wanted to make this video with some personal reflections on this situation, what's been happening, what's going on right now, what may happen, and how I feel about all this. I made a video earlier when this news broke about the NHL and its multiple schedules with different variables for where this team might play next season. That was more factual. This one is more personal. Beginning with this, I feel so bad for the Coyotes fans. Because like in a lot of situations, they have zero direct control of what's happened, how things are going, and what eventually is going to take place. These are fans who put in money and time and emotion into a franchise that's ultimately just going to walk away from them. And maybe with a promise from the league that they'll come back. Eventually, I'll get to that here in the video, but it's just so hard to almost instantly say goodbye after years and decades of turmoil. And like, this is just it. You have no control over this, fans, but this is the fate and the result you've been given. And I also realize this Coyotes fan base in particular is going to get criticized for not having many fans or enough fans or showing the attendance support that you would hope to expect from a National Hockey League market. And they're a non-traditional hockey market. Maybe I also relate to that being a San Jose person, is that other spots around the country and the continent, they look at a place like Phoenix or even a place like California and say, well, hockey wasn't supposed to be there anyway. You absolutely cannot take this sport, this game, and the attachment of the fans to a team away from the fans. It is so absolutely difficult. The geography here doesn't really matter. Traditional, non-traditional, I feel so bad for this fan base. And especially a fan base that was just shown renderings and details of what a forever home might look like for them. Now, there's a lot to that land auction that the Coyotes ownership was going to make a bid on. $68.5 million was the starting point, 110 acres, but the arena and a concert venue and a practice facility and 1,900 luxury residential units and 400,000 square feet of commercial space. This was such a huge development, like $4 or $5+ billion. I get it. It was a bit extravagant and maybe too elaborate. But how's a team going to release all that and say, we're going all in on this for you as our commitment to stay here? No public money is going to go to this project. We will take care of everything. And then what, a week later, the rumors come out that the NHL has multiple schedules and this team is okay with selling itself to Salt Lake City, and maybe there's a thought of expansion moving on down the road. Anyway, this is happening so quick. And there's no surprise here, right? The Coyotes have been teetering on this and that. And I mean, they've basically flirted with, well, they were in Phoenix and then they were in Glendale, but they had opportunities in Mesa and Scottsdale, and they're currently playing in Tempe. I mean, they've basically been involved with every single municipality in the Valley. And we've known that this has been unstable for a while, but this ultimate ending, what feels like this ultimate ending, is so surreal because it's happening so quick. And that's part of the unfortunate aspect for the fans here, is that it's just going to be a blink and they're gone, and nothing is for certain in terms of when they're coming back. And the Coyotes are a team and an organization that has just seemed to say one thing and do something else. Like, this is a team that over recent years and the last decade has taken on player contracts that are essentially dead contracts. A player that's injured, but they have a high salary. And the way that this team reaches the mandatory salary cap floor is to take on these dead contracts, which is amazing, right? Usually teams are fighting every single way possible to stay under the cap. And then here's the Arizona Coyotes, who are just trying to find a way to spend enough money to get right to that bottom threshold so they can maintain being a legitimate National Hockey League team. And then the team is essentially evicted by Glendale and the Gila River Arena because of unpaid bills and a bunch of other things going on. They could not even maintain their home in Glendale, which I realized wasn't perfect. I realized didn't exactly pan out, was not convenient to the fan base. I was out there quite a few times. I understand that geography, but that the team got kicked out of somewhere that at least worked for the interim while they figured something else out. They didn't even have time to stay in Glendale. They had to go to a college arena, a brand new college arena in Tempe, which I'll get to in just a second. So all that, right? Like, can't pay for this. They won't pay for that. But then it's a team that comes out and says, you know what, we're going to win this land auction starting at $68.5 million. We're also going to take care of $100 million of the infrastructure costs and needs of this site. And then we're going to go ahead and develop like a $4 or $5 or $6 billion project in this entire complex. How do you have all the money to do that, but you didn't have enough money to field a competitive team year after year over a lot of different years? It's just been interesting from that regard how this has played out. Mullett Arena was a bad idea. Now, I say that with zero connection to Arizona State University because honestly, they are so lucky to have Mullett Arena as their barn, a college hockey team that gets a facility like this. Unbelievable out here on the West Coast. I was so happy for them when I found out that this was going to be a thing for ASU. When I found out the Arizona Coyotes of the NHL would be sharing this venue, 4,600 seats, there is a huge difference between intimate and not appropriate, right? You're not supposed to have an NHL arena that has seats on the ends of the rink without backs to them, like literally bleacher seats. You're not supposed to have a visiting dressing room that is made of curtains. The walls are made of curtains. At least that's the way it initially was. Intimate and not appropriate for professional sports are two totally different things. And I understand some players liked the small crowd, the small feel environment. They thought it was really rambunctious. But a lot of visiting players came in and said, what is this? This is not reflective of the National Hockey League. And look, there is a reason. I get it. Some people enjoyed the novelty of this. But there is a reason that NHL teams across the country and continent are not sharing their building with college hockey teams. It's just not supposed to work that way. And it had already been 2 seasons at the Mullett, last year and this year, and it was about to be 3 more years? I mean, whose idea was this? I'll get to that in a second. It's not a great idea for business to have 4,600 paid fans, and that's it. Especially a team like the Coyotes, especially in a non-traditional hockey market. I don't care if tickets were going for 2 or 3 times the cost. That's just not enough butts in the seats to take care of funding a hockey team. There's no question about it. 4,600, not even close to what this team needs to be doing number-wise. So going back to this, who thought this was a good idea to move in here with no end game? Now, I understand they thought that other site in Tempe was going to be the end game until it got voted down was it May? About a year ago? They thought this was going to be a temporary stop until that happened, and then that didn't happen. And now this land auction is about to happen, and the mayor of Scottsdale is saying, we're totally against this, we're not going to help your project either. But going to this, like, purgatory of Mullett Arena, and again, a purgatory for NHL standards, it's great for college hockey. But in reverse, going to this temporary spot that wasn't meant for this, and you didn't really have a complete build to the other side of the bridge. Like, the bridge wasn't built yet. And you were at this temporary spot, and there was no assurance that the other side of the bridge would be there. That was a rough stop for the Coyotes in their journey. Now, the promise of reactivation of this franchise, I find very interesting. That the NHL would actually say, hey, you know what? Murillo family, you've got a 5-year window to get a new building figured out and built, and then we'll give you the team back. We'll give you an expansion team. We'll call it the Coyotes. In fact, we'll give you the Coyotes brand. The team will not take that to Salt Lake City, even though they could, right? The Salt Lake City Coyotes, it sounds fine. I mean, if the Utah Jazz works, by the way, the team might be called the Utah something, not the Salt Lake City something. Utah Yetis, I heard that. Utah Grizzlies, I heard that. But the bottom line is if the Coyotes brand stays in the desert, as it should, and the NHL offers up the Phoenix community the promise of reactivation of a team, not even expansion, but reactivation, then you know what? In a way, all of this entirely softens the blow of this departure. And there still is some unknown. An ownership group still has to come through and deliver a facility and everything surrounding it for the NHL to come back to Arizona in the Valley. So that's not a guarantee. But at least the promise of reactivation being there and the window being open to it, I guess it's supposed to make fans feel better. And in a way, you don't have to throw away your Desert Dogs hat. You don't have to ditch your Coyotes gear because you're so upset about this, as you should be. But the challenge is, when this team gets reactivated, does it have to begin with the very same ownership group all over again? Does that mean that you're going to go straight down the same roads you were before? Now, granted, the team doesn't happen unless the arena situation is figured out, so at least you'd hope that's water under the bridge by that point. But things here haven't already been working, and you're just going to jump right back into action with the same tandem of the fan base and the ownership that couldn't make it work, that ultimately here it looks like they're going to have to sell the team to Utah. And speaking of Salt Lake City, I mean, I do admire their persistence for the National Hockey League. Ryan Smith and that Smith Entertainment Group, they've been targeting the NHL. I know there's the Larry H. Miller Group, which has also been targeting Major League Baseball in Salt Lake City. Now, that's interesting. Is Salt Lake City bound to get an NHL team and maybe a Major League Baseball team here by the end of the 2020s? Seems possible. I don't know that maybe now they get both. The state of Utah recently put away $1.8 billion of public money. $900 for a new NHL and NBA arena, and $900 for a Major League Baseball stadium if, in fact, professional baseball comes, Major League Baseball comes to Salt Lake City. But going back to this Smith Group, they already own the Jazz. This is Ryan Smith of the company Qualtrics. They mention expansion as their goal, right? That statement came out maybe a month or two ago. They said, we are searching for NHL expansion. We have initiated the process. Oh, but then they also said, by the way, we're ready to take in an NHL team starting next year if that's also a possibility. So they mention expansion, but I felt like that was always a front, right? Salt Lake City was out to get whatever team they could ASAP. Coyotes or anybody else, just a hockey team as soon as possible. Oh, and I mentioned there, they've just committed the $900 million, the $1.8 total billion. So they've got the money. They've got the ownership group. They've got the motivation here. And I do think the NHL probably is going to do well in Salt Lake City. Probably over the long term, definitely in the short term with that honeymoon phase, the excitement there. They're getting something else beyond the Utah Jazz, which is kind of their really only major pro sports team right now. But I just don't enjoy the trade-off here. I don't like to see the Phoenix area suffer so that Salt Lake City can get something. It doesn't have to be that way, especially if the NHL is saying, well, we're going to remedy the Phoenix thing eventually anyway. It doesn't have to work like this. But obviously, this is the road it seems like we're going down. And lastly here, all of this kind of feels like the worst side of professional sports. And I'm saying that as somebody who loves sports, who works in sports. I'm around this all the time. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the awesome stuff, and the dirty stuff. But this is among the worst sides of professional sports. Because teams like the Coyotes, and I'm not just singling them out, there's a lot of teams that say they love to connect with the community. They love to be ingrained, entrenched in their fan base and their people for 10, 20, 50 years. And they're all about community. Oh, until it turns to business. And then the community thing just goes right out the window. We're gone. See you later. We're going to go to this community now. We're all about community, just not your community anymore. And you kind of wonder about the potential damage to the Arizona hockey fan base here. And granted, we'll go back to that criticism. Well, how many fans do they have? It doesn't matter. There's a fan base there. There's complete support there. If there was a more competitive team over the years and the venue thing was a little bit more convenient than Glendale and figured out, yeah, they would thrive in Scottsdale, in and around Scottsdale. I don't know what the mayor thinks. I've been down there enough to know and understand they would do quite well somewhere within the vicinity of Scottsdale. But now what's happening here? Are we potentially damaging the Arizona hockey fan base? Do you really even want to go back there now? So like they'll come back in 4 or 5 years, and then it'll take them 3, 4, 5 years to get good again, maybe. I don't know how expansion's going to go. Are they going to get an expansion draft like the Kraken and the Golden Knights? Who knows? Maybe they're good instantly. So they're going to be good again back and good in 2032? It's really rough to think about it that way. Relocation in professional sports should be an absolute last case scenario, right? You can't make rules against this, and you can't say it should never happen. Sometimes it is the last choice. It is the last option. And it feels like in this case, the NHL was pretty diligent in offering multiple ownership groups and multiple situations and multiple tries at this. But I feel like it's got to be totally obvious that something wasn't going to work. And at least in this case, the Coyotes had something on the board that they were aiming for, that they just had to pay for. Maybe the belief is that they couldn't actually follow through with that. But I also want to say, as much as this is just sports and this is just a fan situation and a fan thing among Coyotes faithful, that's true. But it's also families and jobs and lives to some people that work for and in and around the Coyotes situation. So I feel for all of those people right now, as much as I feel for the fans, and that's how I wanted to start this video, let me end it by saying I totally feel for everybody involved surrounding the team that's going to have their life changed and affected by the fact that what they do surrounding the hockey team, supporting the hockey team, is just going to go away. And some of them will have the choice to stick with it, maybe relocate with the team. Others are going to say, that's not what I'm doing. This is tough that something like this is not supposed to go away. Somebody has decided it's going to go away. They've run out the clock on this. And that's it. That's the end of the story. So I feel for those people among the most too. Again, those are just my personal reflections on this Coyotes situation. Not terribly surprising given the recent decades and all of the turmoil, all of the drama. But again, how fast this is all kind of culminating right here and where I'm seeing the information from and how I'm feeling about this. It is amazing how fast this is all coming together, how real it feels, and how much I believe the Coyotes are probably going to Salt Lake City. You made it here to the end of the video. You know I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. That'll greatly help me and this channel and this video. And by the way, I would love to see you back here next time. So do me a favor, go down there and hit that subscribe button before the video ends.